everyone. I'm sorry for those of you who didn't get your lunch today. I think a lot of people are going to be rolling in with food and stuff, so that's fine. If you're really hungry and want to leave, totally understand. So if somebody would have told me that I was going to be addressing an audience talking about diversity and inclusion a couple of years ago, I would have said, you're crazy. A little bit about me. I am head of talent at Homebrew, which is a seed stage venture capital firm. We've got about 23 companies in our portfolio, and we were founded about 3 years ago. My background, what am I doing up here on stage? So I spent 6 years at Google from 2003 to 2009 in different recruiting capacities. We never really had to think much about diversity and inclusion when I was there. And I do want to say my talk today is really going to be around gender diversity. So if you don't want to hear about gender diversity, feel free to leave. I won't be offended at all. After Google, I went to Salesforce, and I spent 6 years there from 2009 to 2015. And something happened along the way there in about 2011, 2012. As much as people wanted to come work for us, and it was really a darling, largest tech employer in San Francisco, and there are people from Salesforce here, it's a great company. But something happened in about 2011, 2012, and the story that I'm going to tell happened when I was running sales leadership recruiting, and I went to Toronto, Canada, to go recruit an executive, and there happened to be a sales kickoff meeting there. And I'd never been invited to sales kickoff, so I was pretty flattered they wanted me there. I was invited by a team of sales execs. And I always avoided sales kickoffs in Las Vegas. All the San Francisco sales people would go there, and somebody would always wind up naked in an elevator, I kid you not, but with their badge on, because they made a really big deal. I said, never take off your badge. So I always avoided those things. But I was invited to go to Toronto, so I went, and I had no idea what to expect. And I walk into this room at like 10 o'clock in the morning with loud, rocky music playing. And there were about 100 people in the room. There were 4 women. I was one of them. And somebody gets on stage, no shirt, silk shorts, and a robe and boxing gloves, and gets on the stage and starts sort of punching, loud music. And all of a sudden they start talking about all the sales deals they've closed and how they need to close more. And then another person gets up and does the same. I'm like, how long is this going to go on for? And the music kept going. There's only so many times you can hear Eye of the Tiger. And after this goes on for about 45 minutes, finally it stopped. I was like, thank God. And the head of commercial sales gets up, who I know from San Francisco, great guy, and he's now wearing a hockey jersey because apparently hockey's really big in Canada. And he says, you guys, we're going to do great. We're going to just kick it this year, but we need to hire more women. And I'm like rolling my eyes, ready to follow the chair. And then it ends, and I go up to him and a group of other sales guys who I'm there to basically hire this executive for, and I say, you guys, I have nothing against boxing, but if you seriously want to hire more women, you need to rethink this theme. And they kind of looked at me and they're like, you're right. So since then, that company has come a long way. They now have a chief of equality officer. They've done a ton in terms of women's equal pay. It's an amazing company. Now what I do is very, very different. I work with seed stage companies. We start working with companies when it's 2 people on a couch, maybe 3 people in a garage. So if you remember anything from my talk today, please do not remember that story about Rocky in Canada and shirtless men on a stage. I want you to remember 2 things. Be intentional and start early. One of the companies I do a lot of work for is The Skim. It's a company founded by 2 women when they started the company 28. And one of the interesting things they're dealing with right now is they're 33 people, they're 70% women, and 30% men. And I was chatting with Danielle Weisberg, who's a co-founder, about her thoughts on diversity. What she said to me was, it's really important to us that we establish The Skim as a company with gender diversity. Of our first 5 hires, 2 were male. We didn't want to create a company where the only people working in the demo it served. We want to make sure that we always have people with different backgrounds and perspective to challenge our thinking. However, on the other side, last week I met with one of our new companies that we just invested on. There's 6 people. 6 men, 6 engineers. They have an offer out to a 7th. She's a PhD engineer. And what the founder said to me was, if she does not accept, we're putting a moratorium on hiring until our first female candidate does. Again, if you remember anything, be intentional and start early. So how do you do this? What I'm going to take you through today is some very tactical steps in terms of hiring with early stage companies. So why is any of this important at all? Is it so we can be politically correct? So diversity is important for a number of reasons. It can actually improve problem solving when you have diverse teams. Diversity drives innovation. Diverse teams can help attract talent. And if you have diverse boards, it will boost return on equity. How do we know this? There are a bunch of studies done on this. And if you want all the data, if you go to homebrew.co, and I'll give you a link to this at the end of my presentation, you can go through all the studies that actually support this. We have the data. Why does diversity matter early on? Well, I'm in this great position where I do get to work with these companies before they've learned really bad habits. Unlike going to companies when there are already 10,000 people and it's much harder to correct. When you work with companies early on, you get to teach them before things get tough. It won't happen on its own. You need to be intentional. And every hire makes a difference. So if you start with a company that's 3 people, their 4th hire is going to have an incredible impact on the culture. You will see it less when you wait till you're 100 people and then you try to correct this problem. I'm going to take you now through some very basic tactical steps. We're going to talk about job descriptions, sourcing, interviewing, and negotiating. How do you run an unbiased interview process? Job descriptions. Word choice matters. Now, you've probably seen the obvious. You read through a job description and you see the word hacker. Everybody knows men like to hack things. So you take that word out. But what about other words? What about words like competitive, independent? You might not know, but those words tend to skew masculine. But what about the flip side? What about a word like responsible, loyal, considerate? Some of you probably know the tool Textio. It's a machine learning-based platform where you can actually just run the job description through it, and it will tell you if your job description is skewed masculine or feminine. You can try it out for free and see if you like it, and you'll be really surprised. Some of your company's job descriptions will skew towards one or the other, and it actually gives you a score. So that's something you can try. Sourcing candidates. If you post it, they will come. You've got to post outside your comfort zone. And what this means is when you're an early seed stage company, do not source from your network because you're going to get a bunch of PLUs, people like us. Interviewing. Communicate inclusion through the entire process. I'm going to break this down into 3 areas: preparing the candidate, preparing the team, and preparing the environment. How do you prepare a candidate? I think Stripe has done a great job with an interview guide. You want to set a candidate up for success, whether they're a tech candidate or a non-tech candidate. You can go to the Homebrew blog and find, I wrote a blog on diversity. You can directly go to Stripe's interview guide. Preparing the interview team. You want to have a diverse and inclusive interview team. How do you do this if you're a 3-person company? You want to get creative. Bring in somebody from your investor board, your advisory board. I'm constantly asked to do interviews of engineering candidates for our portfolio companies. I am not an engineer. I was a psychology major at a liberal arts school. But I can speak to why we invested in the company or why I think this company has a great culture. Preparing the environment, candidate experience. I have had to have conversations with our portfolio companies to clean up their bathrooms, put toilet paper in their bathrooms, basic things. When you walk into a company, you want to have an environment that's inviting. And this is a very easy fix, but you would not believe some companies in the very early stages do not know how to have an environment that's inviting. Negotiating. Compensation should not be dictated by negotiating ability. If you're a better negotiator than the candidate that came in before you, that doesn't mean you should get a better offer. So how do you mitigate this? What you do is you have preset salary bands and equity bands before you interview anybody. So I spend a lot of time with our companies helping them do this before they interview anyone. Again, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, be intentional and start early. Thank you. Do we have time for any questions?
Can you guys? All right, great. Yeah, so if you want to take a few questions, just a couple, and we'll start getting the other panel together. Any questions from the audience?
So you spoke about necessarily getting these new hires in and being diverse in these new hires, but I'd like to ask you a question on how do you retain these new hires? So a lot of times people come in and you're sold a dream, and then once you're in that dream, you realize it's a nightmare and I've got to escape.
Absolutely.
So could you talk to that?
And to be honest with you, I had a piece on retention and mentoring in here, but I didn't have enough time. So I'm happy to answer that now, and then also I have more information if you do go to my blog. So mentoring is a tricky thing. A lot of people are going to say mentoring doesn't work, but I think when it comes to a candidate who is the first diversity candidate, and again, when I'm talking about diversity, it's somebody from an underrepresented group. I think having somebody who is a devoted and very consistent mentor is the first thing you need to do. I also think it's really important not to make that person so involved in having them making them have to attract other diversity hires that takes away from what their actual job is. We hear that over and over. I was the first female hire. Now all I do is get asked to find other female hires. That's not what I was hired to do. I was actually asked to be an engineer. So if that is part of their job, be very clear about what they're being measured on. And mentorship does not have to come from obvious places. If they're the fourth hire of a company and there's 3 men, maybe find them a mentor who's on their investor board or advisory board. It doesn't have to come from an obvious place. I think that's really key. You need to be very thoughtful about who that person is and make sure it's somebody that's going to be with them for 2 years, not for 6 months.